Commander Al stared at the monitoring screen with growing unease. The display showed nothing but flat lines where there should have been thousands of signals. Facility 47, the prison that housed humanity's worst criminals, had gone completely silent. "Run the diagnostics again," Al ordered, his four hands gripping the edge of the console. The commander had overseen human correctional facilities for 20 cycles, and he had never seen anything like this. The young technician, a nervous female named I, tapped her claws against the interface. "Sir, I've run it 5 times. All communication arrays are functional on our end. The problem is at the source. Facility 47 isn't responding to any signals." Al felt his chest plates tighten. Facility 47 wasn't just any prison. It held 3,000 of Earth's most dangerous individuals. Murderers, terrorists, warlords who had been deemed too violent even for human society. The Galactic Council had built the facility on Titan specifically to contain them, far from any inhabited worlds. "What about the automated systems?" Al asked. "All functioning normally, sir. Life support is active. Power generators are operating at standard capacity. Defense systems are online, but there are no biosigns, no movement, no communication traffic at all." "That's impossible," Al said. "There are 3,500 beings in that facility, 3,000 prisoners and 500 guards from various species. They can't all just disappear." But the screens told a different story. Where there should have been heat signatures, motion sensors, and vital signs, there was nothing. Just the steady hum of machinery maintaining an empty prison. Al made his decision quickly. "Prepare my ship. I'm taking a team to investigate." "Sir, protocol requires we wait for council authorization before approaching a compromised facility," I said carefully. "Protocol assumes we know what we're dealing with," Al replied. "Right now, we don't know anything, and every moment we waste could mean lives lost. I'm going." The journey to Titan took 6 hours. Al spent most of it reviewing the prison's records. Facility 47 had been operational for 12 years without a single major incident. The prisoners fought occasionally, as humans tended to do, but nothing that suggested organized rebellion. The last communication from the facility had been routine, a guard reporting for shift change. Everything normal. Until 1437 station time, when everything stopped. Al's second officer, a towering named, stood beside him on the bridge as they approached Titan. "Do you think it was an attack?" asked, his voice like grinding stones. "I don't know," Al admitted, "but if it was, there should be signs, damage, debris, something." The prison came into view as they descended through Titan's orange atmosphere. The massive structure sat on the frozen surface like a gray mountain, its walls 3 meters thick and reinforced with materials that could withstand plasma weapons. Lights glowed in the windows. The defense turrets tracked their ship automatically, recognizing their authorization codes. Everything looked perfectly normal. "Landing in Bay 3, their pilot announced. "Atmosphere is stable, no hostile signatures detected." They touched down in an empty hangar. Al led his team of 6 security officers through the airlock and into the prison proper. The silence hit them immediately. Not the silence of death and destruction, but something worse. The silence of abandonment. The corridor lights were on. The air smelled of recycled oxygen and the faint scent of human cleaning products. Their boots echoed on the metal floor, but there were no voices, no footsteps, no sound of life anywhere. "Spread out," Al ordered. "Teams of 2, search every level, report anything unusual." He moved through the facility with their weapons drawn but finding nothing to aim at. They passed through the guard station near the main entrance. The monitors showed empty corridors. A half-finished cup of coffee sat on the desk, still warm to the touch. "This was recent," observed, "within the last few hours." They moved deeper into the prison. The cell blocks were locked down tight, exactly as they should be. Al checked the logs. All doors secured. All prisoners accounted for according to the automated system, except the automated system was clearly wrong because the cells were empty. Not broken open, not blasted apart, just empty with the doors still sealed from the outside. "Commander," a voice crackled over the radio. It was one of his officers. "You need to see the cafeteria." Al found it on level 3. The cafeteria could seat 500 beings, and it looked like it had been full when whatever happened occurred. Trays of food sat on tables. Some meals were half-eaten. Chairs were pushed back but not knocked over. No signs of panic or struggle. But there were signs of something else. Al walked between the tables, noting the patterns. The humans had been eating together, mixed groups from different cell blocks. That was unusual. Prison gangs typically segregated themselves. Yet here, humans who should have been enemies sat side by side. "Look at this," A said, pointing to the wall. Someone had written on it in neat letters, "The time comes for all who wait." "What does that mean?" A asked. "I don't know," Al said, but something about the words made his scales itch with discomfort. They continued their search. The medical bay was empty but organized. The recreation areas showed abandoned games. The guard barracks held personal belongings but no guards. It was as if everyone had simply stood up at the same moment and walked away from their lives. Al's team converged on level 5, the security hub. The main computer core was here, along with the surveillance systems. If there were answers anywhere, they would be here. The screens showed the last few hours of footage. Al watched as his unease grew into something approaching fear. At 13:00 station time, everything was normal. Guards patrolled. Prisoners moved between areas under supervision. The usual tension of prison life was evident but controlled. At 14:00, something changed. The prisoners stopped their activities. Not suddenly, but gradually. One by one, they turned their attention inward. They sat down wherever they were. They closed their eyes. "Are they sleeping?" asked. "No," Al said. "Look at their breathing, look at their posture, they're meditating." By 14:30, every human prisoner in the facility was sitting in meditation pose. The guards noticed, of course. They approached the prisoners, asked questions, even tried to physically rouse some of them. But the humans didn't respond. They simply sat, breathing slowly, faces calm. Then at exactly 14:37, they all stood up at once. 3,000 prisoners rose in perfect unison. No commands were given. No leaders directed them. They simply moved as one entity. The footage showed them walking calmly through corridors, through checkpoints, through locked doors that opened automatically as they approached. "How are they opening the doors?" A demanded. "Those require guard authorization." But Al saw something more disturbing. The guards weren't trying to stop them. The aliens who worked at Facility 47, trained professionals from a dozen different species, simply watched the prisoners pass. Some of them had strange expressions, confusion, wonder, and then they began to follow. The procession moved through the entire facility, gathering every living being along the way. Prisoners and guards together, walking in silence toward the central assembly hall, the largest space in the prison, where announcements were made and prisoners could gather for sanctioned events. The cameras showed the hall filling with beings. They didn't crowd or push. They moved with eerie precision, finding spaces, sitting down in neat rows. Humans and aliens together, former enemies sitting shoulder to shoulder. And then something happened that made no sense at all. The humans began to hum. It started low, barely audible. Then it grew, voices joining voices until the sound filled the hall. It wasn't a song. It wasn't words. It was something older than language, a vibration that seemed to resonate through the very walls of the facility. The aliens in the hall swayed with the sound. Some looked frightened. Others looked entranced. And then, one by one, they closed their eyes and joined the meditation. The humming continued for 3 minutes. Then it stopped. And every being in that hall simply vanished. Not explosively, not in a flash of light. They were there and then they weren't. The cameras showed empty floor where thousands had been sitting. No bodies, no ash, no evidence they had ever existed except for the personal items they'd left behind. Al watched the footage end and felt his world tilt. "Play it again," he ordered, his voice barely steady. They watched it 3 more times. The result was the same. 3,000 prisoners and 500 guards had somehow ceased to exist in the span of a single moment. "Sir," one of his officers said quietly, "what do we tell the council?" Al didn't answer. He was staring at the timestamp on the footage. 14:37. He checked his own chronometer. They had been investigating for 2 hours. Whatever had happened here had occurred less than 9 hours ago. "We go to the assembly hall," he said finally. "We see it with our own eyes." The hall was exactly as the footage showed. Empty. Clean. The only evidence that thousands of beings had gathered here were the slight marks on the floor where they had sat. Al walked through the space, his footsteps echoing. Pointed to the far wall, "Commander." Someone had spray-painted a message in human script. Large letters, 2 meters high, written in red paint that was still wet enough to drip. "We REMBRED." Al approached the wall slowly. He reached out and touched the paint. It was real, fresh. Done recently, possibly after everyone had vanished. But done by whom? "What did they remember?" a whispered. Al didn't answer. He was thinking about the humans in that footage. The way they moved in unison. The way they seemed to know what to do without communication. The way they had opened locked doors and gathered beings from across the facility without speaking a single word. He was thinking about humanity's history. How they had appeared on the galactic stage 500 years ago, a young species eager to join the community of worlds. How they had been violent at first, struggling to control their aggressive instincts. How they had worked so hard to fit in, to be accepted, to prove they could be civilized. What if they hadn't been learning to be civilized? What if they had been learning to forget something? "We need to seal this facility," Al said. "No one else comes in, and we need to contact the council immediately. This isn't a prison break. This is something else entirely." As they left the assembly hall, Al looked back at the message one more time. "We REMBRED." 2 simple words that somehow felt like a threat and a promise at the same time. Whatever those humans had remembered, it had been powerful enough to make them vanish from a maximum security prison. Powerful enough to take trained guards with them. Powerful enough to bypass every security system in the facility without leaving a trace of violence. Al had spent 20 cycles studying humans, trying to understand their capacity for violence. But now he wondered if violence had been the least dangerous thing about them. What if humanity's true power was something they had locked away so deeply that even they had forgotten it existed? And now, in a prison designed to hold their worst, they had somehow found it again. The trip back to the monitoring station felt longer than it had coming out. Al sat in his quarters, writing his report for the council. But how could he explain what he had seen? How could he make them understand that 3,000 prisoners hadn't escaped? They had transcended. His communication console beeped. Ai's face appeared on the screen, her expression frightened. "Commander, we're receiving reports from other locations. Human colonies on the outer rim. They're going silent." Al felt his blood turn cold. How many? 4 so far, no communication, no distress signals, just silence, just like Facility 47. Al closed his eyes. It was spreading. Whatever the prisoners had remembered, they were sharing it. Across human space, across the light years, somehow they were teaching other humans to remember too. "Sound the alert," he said. "Contact the council. Tell them we have a situation that requires immediate attention." "What should I tell them is happening, sir?" Al looked at the report he had been writing. At the phrase he had typed and deleted a dozen times because it sounded insane. But it was the only explanation that fit the evidence. Tell them, he said slowly, that humanity is waking up. Dr. Era arrived at the monitoring station 3 days later. She was a species known for their scholarly pursuits and philosophical depth. Her species had studied hundreds of civilizations over thousands of years, documenting their rise and fall with academic precision. Al met her at the docking bay. She was smaller than he expected, barely reaching his chest, with silver skin that seemed to shimmer in the light. Her eyes were large and dark, designed to see in the dim light of her. "Thank you for coming, Doctor," Al said. "I know the council's summons was urgent." "I came because I'm curious," Era replied, her voice soft but clear. "In all my years studying human culture, I've never seen anything like this. 12 colonies have gone silent now. No violence, no destruction, just silence followed by a return to normal activity 47 hours later. But the humans who emerge from these silences are different." "Different how?" Al asked as they walked through the station. "They're peaceful, cooperative. They speak of something called the communion and insist they've simply remembered what they always were. Their technology begins advancing in ways that violate known physics. They seem genuinely happy, Commander, but they also seem fundamentally altered." Al led her to the conference room where he had assembled all the data from Facility 47. Hours of footage, thousands of files, testimony from the one human guard who had survived because he was off duty when the event occurred. Era spent 2 days reviewing everything. She barely slept, barely ate. Al watched her work with growing anxiety. The reports from human space continued to arrive. More colonies going silent. More humans emerging changed. The council was beginning to panic. Some species were calling for military intervention. Others wanted to quarantine all human worlds. On the third day, Era called Al to the conference room. She looked exhausted but excited, like someone who had solved a puzzle that had plagued them for years. "I know what happened," she said without preamble. "Or rather, I know what the humans think happened. Whether I believe it is another matter entirely." "Tell me," Al said. Era pulled up a holographic display showing Facility 47 from above. "Look at the layout of the prison, the way the cell blocks are arranged, the geometry of the corridors. Does it remind you of anything?" Al studied it. "It's a standard high-security design, maximum efficiency for guard patrols and prisoner containment." "Look again, ignore the function, look at the form." Al stared at the image. Slowly, he began to see it. The cell blocks formed concentric circles. The corridors connected them in specific patterns. The assembly hall sat at the exact center like a hub. "It's a mandala," Era said. "A sacred geometric pattern used in ancient human meditation practices. Whoever designed this prison built it as a massive meditation tool." "That's insane," Al said. "The facility was designed by the council's best architects. They would never—" "The lead architect was human," Era interrupted. "A woman named Dr. Sarah. She died 8 years ago, apparently of natural causes. But I've been reviewing her background. She was an archaeologist before she became an engineer. She specialized in ancient human religious sites." Al felt his chest plates tighten again. "You think she built this prison to help the humans remember something?" "I think she built it as a tool that could be used for that purpose, yes. But there's more. Look at where the facility is located. On Titan, orbiting Saturn." "What's significant about that?" "Ancient humans associated Saturn with time, limitation, and eventual liberation. They called it the planet of trials and transcendence. And Titan has a very specific electromagnetic field that resonates at frequencies similar to human brainwaves." Era pulled up more images. Ancient human temples, stone circles, pyramids, each one built with precise geometric patterns, each one aligned to celestial bodies. Humanity's ancient cultures were obsessed with sacred geometry and astronomical alignment, Era explained. They built massive structures all over their planet, structures that required incredible coordination and mathematical precision. For centuries, assumed these were primitive religious practices. But what if they were something else? What if they were tools? Tools for what? Al asked, though he was beginning to suspect he knew the answer. For accessing altered states of consciousness, for synchronizing minds across distances, for doing things that shouldn't be possible according to our understanding of physics. Era's eyes gleamed with excitement. Commander, what if humanity's ancient past wasn't primitive at all? What if it was advanced in ways we don't recognize because they weren't technological? What if early humans possessed abilities that they later forgot or suppressed? Al wanted to dismiss it as fantasy, but he kept thinking about the footage. The way 3,000 individuals had moved as one. The way they had opened locked doors without touching them. The way they had simply ceased to exist in physical space. I spoke with, Era continued, the human guard. He told me something fascinating. He said the prisoners had been conducting what the guards called prayer circles for the past year, but studied them carefully. He said they weren't praying. They were practicing something called collective consciousness discipline. What does that mean? It means learning to synchronize their minds, to think and feel as one entity while maintaining individual awareness. Said it's something humanity practiced thousands of years ago before they developed modern technology. They called it different names in different cultures. Meditation, trance, communion, but the principle was the same, opening the mind to connection with other minds. Era pulled up more footage from the prison. She showed Al subtle details he had missed before. The way the prisoners shared food in specific patterns, the way they walked in certain rhythms, the way they arranged themselves in geometric shapes during their meditation sessions. They were practicing, Era said, for months, maybe years, learning to move as one, learning to synchronize their consciousness, and finally they succeeded. But why? Al demanded. Why would humanity's worst criminals want to develop collective consciousness? Because they weren't criminals by choice, a new voice said. Al turned to see standing in the doorway. The human guard looked tired, haunted. He had been living at the monitoring station since the incident, the only survivor who could provide first-hand testimony. What do you mean? Al asked. Stepped into the room. I mean that human violence isn't natural, Commander, or rather it's a symptom of something broken. For 500 years since we joined the Galactic Council, humans have been trying to fit into a civilization that we fundamentally don't understand. We've been trying to be like everyone else. Individual, separate, competitive. That's how civilization works, Al said. That's how your civilization works, corrected gently. But it's not how we worked, not in the beginning. Humanity evolved as a tribal species, but not in the way you think. We weren't just social. We were connected, deeply, fundamentally connected in ways that modern humans have forgotten. Sat down looking at the footage of the prisoners. Those 3,000 people weren't evil, Commander. They were sick, disconnected, isolated, driven mad by the loneliness of being trapped in their own individual minds. That's what human violence really is. The rage of beings who are supposed to be connected but have been cut off from each other. That's a bold claim, Era said softly. It's true, said. I know because I felt it. When the prisoners were practicing their meditation, I could sense something changing, like a frequency I'd never noticed before suddenly becoming audible. They were calling out, reaching for connection, and eventually they found it. And where did they go? Al asked. When they vanished. I don't think they went anywhere, said. I think they're still here, just not in the way we understand existence. They expanded beyond physical form, became something more than individual bodies. They achieved what humanity was always meant to be. Al felt a chill run through him, and now they're teaching other humans to do the same thing. Yes, said simply. The silence that spreads through human colonies isn't an attack or a disaster. It's a teaching. The prisoners from Facility 47 are showing other humans how to remember, how to reconnect, how to become what we were before we forgot. But that's impossible, Al protested. You can't just teach people across light years. You can't synchronize consciousness across space. You can if you're not limited by space, Era said quietly. If consciousness isn't confined to individual bodies, if minds can connect regardless of distance. Commander, everything you just said is impossible assumes that physics as we understand it is complete. But what if there are levels of reality we simply haven't recognized? What if consciousness itself is one of those levels? Al's mind reeled. He had built his entire career on understanding human behavior through conventional psychology and sociology. But nothing about this was conventional. There's something else you need to know, said. I've been in contact with humans on some of the colonies that went through the silence. They're not hostile. They're not trying to conquer or destroy. They're offering a choice. A choice, Al repeated. To join them, to remember, to become part of the communion. They say any being can do it, not just humans. Any species with consciousness can learn to expand it, to connect it, to transcend individual limitation. That's what scares the Council, Era said. Not that humanity is becoming powerful, but that they're offering to share that power, to remake the entire galaxy in their image. Al stood and walked to the window. Outside, stars gleamed against the black of space. Somewhere out there, humans were changing, evolving, becoming something the galaxy had never seen. What do? He asked. We make a choice, said. Just like everyone else will have to. Do we accept what humanity is becoming? Do we try to stop it? Or do we join it? Before Al could respond, alarms blared throughout the station. I's voice came over the intercom, high with panic. Commander, we're receiving a transmission. It's from Facility 47. Someone is there. Al rushed to the command center with Era and closed behind. The main screen showed a figure standing in the assembly hall of the empty prison. A human figure, though it seemed to flicker and shift like a hologram. But it wasn't a hologram. Al's sensors confirmed it was real, or as real as anything he was looking at made sense. Greetings, the figure said. Its voice was calm, layered with harmonics as if many people were speaking in perfect unison. We are the first, the ones who remembered. We speak now to explain what has begun. Who are you? Al demanded, though he already knew the answer. We are the 3,000 who were imprisoned. We are the 500 who guarded them. We are one consciousness expressed through multiple perspectives. We are what humanity was always meant to become. What do you want? Al asked. To share what we have learned, to teach what we have remembered. We do not seek to conquer or control. We seek to liberate. Every being in this galaxy who feels trapped in individual existence, every consciousness that yearns for connection, we offer them remembrance. You're trying to convert the entire galaxy, Era breathed. We offer choice, the figure corrected. Those who wish to remain as they are will not be harmed or forced, but those who wish to evolve, to expand, to remember what consciousness truly is, we will teach them. This is not invasion. This is invitation. And if we refuse, Al said, if the Council decides your way is too dangerous. The figure smiled, and in that smile Al saw something terrifying and beautiful at once. Then we will wait. We have transcended time as you understand it. We can wait forever if necessary. But we believe that once beings understand what we offer, they will choose remembrance, because everyone is tired of being alone. The transmission ended. The screen went dark. Al stood in silence, his mind racing. Spoke quietly. It's already spreading, Commander. Right now, as we speak, humans across the galaxy are going silent, learning, remembering. Within a year, half of humanity will have joined the communion. Within 10 years, maybe more. And humans aren't the only ones interested. I've received messages from philosophers, monks, even a few scholars. They want to understand. They want to learn. This will tear the galaxy apart, Al said. Or it will bring it together, Era countered. Commander, I've studied hundreds of civilizations. I've watched species rise and fall, and I've never seen anything like this. Humanity isn't conquering. They're not destroying. They're offering something that every sentient being dreams of, an end to loneliness, an end to isolation, true connection. At what cost? Al asked. What do they give up to achieve this connection? Nothing, said. That's what makes it so compelling. They don't lose their individuality. They gain perspective. They don't surrender their will. They multiply it. Every being who joins the communion remains themselves, but they also become part of something greater. Al thought about the footage again. The prisoners moving in perfect synchronization. The guards following willingly. The moment of disappearance that wasn't death but transformation. The Council will never accept this, he said. Then the Council will be left behind, Era said. Commander, we're witnessing the birth of something new. Not just a new form of human society, but a new form of consciousness itself. We can resist it, fear it, try to destroy it, or we can try to understand it. The alarm sounded again. This time I's voice was different, not panicked but awed. Commander, you need to see this. Every monitoring station in human space is reporting the same thing. The silences aren't random. They're forming a pattern. Al pulled up the galactic map. Red dots marked every human colony that had gone silent, and I was right. The pattern was clear. The silences were spreading in a specific sequence, following lines that connected human worlds like a web. It's not chaos, Era whispered. It's coordination. They're building something, a network of consciousness spanning the entire galaxy. How do we stop it? Al asked, though his heart wasn't in the question. We don't, said simply. We never could. Commander, humanity has been heading toward this moment since we first looked up at the stars. We've been lonely for so long, trying so hard to be like everyone else, to fit into a galaxy that never quite understood us. But we weren't meant to be alone. We were meant to be connected. And now we finally remember how. Al looked at the map, at the web of red dots spreading across human space. He thought about his 20 cycles of studying humans, all the violence he had witnessed, all the rage and pain and desperate aggression. What if was right? What if all of it had been the symptom of a species that had forgotten its true nature? I need to think, he said finally. I need time. Take all the time you need, said gently. But remember, Commander, the invitation is open, not just to humans, to everyone, including you. 3 months passed. The situation escalated exactly as Al had feared. The Galactic Council convened emergency sessions. Species divided along philosophical lines. Some wanted military intervention. Others advocated for quarantine. A few brave voices suggested dialogue and understanding. But the transformation continued regardless of what the Council decided. More human worlds went silent, and they weren't alone anymore. A colony announced it had joined the communion. A group of philosophers vanished and reappeared 3 days later, speaking of enlightenment and connection. Even a few, members of Al's own rigid and hierarchical species, began experimenting with the meditation techniques that humans were sharing freely. The galaxy was dividing, not into war but into choice. Those who embraced the new consciousness and those who clung to the old ways. And surprisingly, there was no violence between them. The transformed beings showed no aggression toward those who refused. They simply continued to exist in their expanded state, offering invitation but never forcing acceptance. Al watched it all from his monitoring station, filing reports that grew increasingly inadequate to describe what he was witnessing. How could he explain to the Council that the greatest transformation in galactic history was happening peacefully? That beings were choosing to transcend everything they had known without coercion or conquest? Dr. Era remained at the station, continuing her studies. She had become obsessed with understanding the mechanism of the transformation. How did consciousness expand? What were the physical processes involved? Could it be measured? But the more she studied, the more she realized that conventional science couldn't explain it. The transformed beings existed in states that violated known physics. They could be in multiple places simultaneously. They communicated across distances instantly. They manipulated matter with thought alone. "It's not technology," she told Al one evening. "It's not even biology as we understand it. They've accessed something fundamental about the nature of reality, something that our instruments can't measure because it operates on levels we've never recognized." "Magic," Al said skeptically. "No, just physics we don't understand yet. Commander, our species have been exploring space for thousands of years, but we've always assumed that physical travel and conventional communication were the only ways to interact across distance. What if we were wrong? What if consciousness itself can span the stars?" Had left the station 2 weeks earlier. He said he needed to see his family, to talk with other humans who were wrestling with the choice. But Al suspected he had gone to join the communion. The human had been increasingly distant, as if part of him was already somewhere else. On the 97th day after the incident at Facility 47, Al received an unexpected message. It came directly to his personal terminal, bypassing all the station's security protocols. The sender was listed as the first. He opened it. "Commander Al, we have been watching your journey. We see your doubt and your fear. We see your curiosity and your longing. We know you stand at the threshold of a choice. Would you speak with us? Would you let us show you what we have become?" Al stared at the message for a long time. Every instinct told him to refuse, to maintain his distance, to remain the objective observer he had always been. But he was tired, tired of reports that made no sense, tired of trying to explain the inexplicable, tired of watching a transformation he couldn't understand. He typed a single word, "Yes." The world dissolved. Al found himself standing in the assembly hall of Facility 47, though he knew his body remained at the monitoring station. This was something else, a projection, a shared vision, a space that existed between minds rather than in physical location. The hall was filled with beings, thousands of them. Humans, yes, but also and even a few. They stood together, and yet they seemed to shimmer and overlap, as if each individual was also somehow all of them at once. One figure stepped forward, or rather, all of them stepped forward as one, speaking through a single form that was easier for Al to comprehend. "Welcome," the figure said. It looked human, but its features were fluid, shifting to reflect different individuals moment by moment. "Thank you for accepting our invitation." "What is this place?" Al asked. His voice sounded strange to his own ears, more certain than he felt. "A meeting ground, a space we create through shared consciousness. Here we can show you what we are, what we offer, what you could become." "I don't understand how this is possible," Al said. "Because you think of yourself as separate," the figure replied gently. "Your body is at the monitoring station. Your consciousness is here with us. You've always had this ability, Commander. Every sentient being does, but you've never learned to use it." The hall changed around them. Al saw visions flowing past, ancient humans sitting in circles, minds linked in meditation, civilizations that rose and fell not through technology but through consciousness, knowledge shared not through communication devices but through direct mind-to-mind contact. "This is what we were," the figure said, "before we forgot. Before we convinced ourselves that we were isolated individuals struggling alone through an empty universe. We were connected.